December 1995, Princess Diana did something that had never been done in the 900-year history of the British monarchy. She broke one of the most sacred royal protocols, a rule so fundamental that violating it was considered an unforgivable offence. Palace officials were horrified, security was outraged, and the Queen was furious. But when Elizabeth II learned why Diana had broken this rule, something extraordinary happened. The monarch who valued tradition above everything else did something nobody expected. She forgave Diana completely. And in that moment of forgiveness, the relationship between the two women changed forever. Diana had been breaking small royal rules since her wedding day in 1981. She hugged people when she should have shaken hands. She sat on the ground with children when protocol demanded she remain standing. She spoke openly to the press when she was supposed to stay silent. Each violation had been met with disapproval from palace officials, stern letters from private secretaries, and increasing frustration from the Queen. The Princess of Wales seems incapable of understanding basic protocol, one senior courtier had complained in 1994. Diana's casual approach to royal rules had become a source of constant tension. She refused to wear gloves at public events, saying they prevented genuine human connection. She insisted on choosing her own charities rather than accepting the traditional royal patronages. She brought her sons to theme parks and fast food restaurants, treating them like normal children instead of future kings. But these were minor infractions, small rebellions that annoyed the establishment but didn't fundamentally challenge royal authority. What Diana did in December 1995 was different. This wasn't about being too casual or too modern. This was about deliberately, consciously violating one of the monarchy's most absolute rules, and everyone knew it. December 18th, 1995, Diana sat in her private sitting room at Kensington Palace, staring at a telephone message that had been delivered to her just 20 minutes earlier. The message was from Margaret Hastings, the head nurse at Great Ormond Street Hospital. It was brief, clinical, and devastating. "Princess, I wanted to inform you that Thomas Bradley, age 7, has taken a significant turn for the worse. The doctors estimate he has perhaps 24 to 48 hours remaining. I know how much your visits meant to him." Diana's hands trembled as she read the message again. Thomas, the little boy with leukemia who had stolen her heart during her official hospital visit 3 months earlier. The child who had asked her if princesses were real or just in fairy tales. She had visited him twice more after that, unofficially, quietly, bringing him books and sitting by his bed reading stories. Thomas had told her she was the only princess he'd ever met, and definitely the only real one. Now Thomas was dying, and Diana knew what she had to do. She picked up the phone and called her private secretary, Amanda Foster. "Amanda, I need to go to Great Ormond Street Hospital. Now. Tonight." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Ma'am, it's nearly 11 p.m. For a royal hospital visit, we need at least 48 hours notice. We need to arrange security, notify the hospital administration, coordinate with—" "I'm not doing an official visit," Diana interrupted. "I'm going as myself, as Diana, a friend visiting a sick child." Amanda's voice became urgent. "Your Royal Highness, you cannot visit a public institution without proper security arrangements. The protocol is absolutely clear. You cannot simply show up at a hospital in the middle of the night. The Queen would never approve." Diana stood up, already walking toward her bedroom to change clothes. "I'm not asking for approval, Amanda. I'm informing you. Thomas is dying, and I promised him I would be there. I'm going." "Ma'am, please, if you do this without authorization, without security protocol, without official clearance, you'll be violating one of the most fundamental royal rules. The palace will be furious. The Queen will understand," Diana said, though she didn't believe it. "Or she won't. Either way, I'm going." At 11:47 p.m, Diana's personal driver, James Morrison, pulled up to a side entrance of Great Ormond Street Hospital. Diana wore jeans, a simple sweater, and a baseball cap. No royal insignia, no formal attire, no security detail following her. Just a woman coming to see a dying child. The night security guard at the door, Malcolm Peters, nearly dropped his coffee when he recognized her. "Princess Diana? But we didn't receive any notification of a royal visit. I don't have you on the security clearance list. I should call—" "Please don't," Diana said gently. "I'm not here officially. I'm here to see Thomas Bradley. He's in the pediatric oncology ward. I'm a friend of his family." Malcolm looked uncertain. Every instinct told him to follow protocol, to call his supervisor, to get authorization. but there was something in Diana's eyes, a desperate urgency that made him step aside. "Pediatric oncology is on the 4th floor, West Wing. I'll call ahead and let the night nurse know you're coming." "Thank you," Diana said, already moving toward the elevator. The rule Diana had broken was absolute and ancient. No member of the royal family could visit any public institution without prior security clearance, official notification, and formal approval from the Queen's private secretary. This wasn't just about safety, it was about maintaining the dignity and authority of the crown. Royal visits were carefully orchestrated events, never spontaneous, never unplanned. Diana knew this. She had been lectured about it countless times, and she had just violated it completely. Nurse Margaret Hastings met Diana at the elevator, surprise and concern on her face. "Your Royal Highness, I never expected when I sent that message that you would actually come tonight. I thought perhaps tomorrow with proper arrangements." "How is he?" Diana asked. Margaret's expression told Diana everything. "He's been asking for you. He told his mother this afternoon that he hoped the princess would visit one more time before he went to heaven. Those were his exact words." They walked quietly through the dimmed hospital corridors. At the door to Thomas's room, Margaret paused. "His parents are inside. His mother, Claire, and his father, David. They've been here for 3 days straight. They're exhausted, heartbroken." Diana nodded and entered the room. Claire Bradley looked up from her son's bedside and gasped when she saw Diana. "Princess Diana, how did you... we didn't..." "I heard Thomas needed a visitor," Diana said softly. "May I sit with him?" Thomas was tiny in the hospital bed, his 7-year-old body frail from months of treatment. But when his eyes fluttered open and he saw Diana, a weak smile appeared on his face. "You came," he whispered. "The real princess came." Diana sat on the edge of his bed, taking his small hand in hers. "Of course I came. I promised you I'd always be here when you needed me. Remember?" For the next 2 hours, Diana sat with Thomas. She read him his favourite story about a brave knight. She told him silly jokes that made him laugh weakly. She held his hand and sang soft lullabies when he grew tired. Claire and David Bradley watched in stunned silence as the most famous woman in the world treated their dying son with such genuine love and care. At 2:14 a.m., Thomas's breathing became laboured. Margaret came in and checked his vitals, then looked at Diana with tears in her eyes. Diana leaned close to Thomas's ear. "You're the bravest boy I've ever met," she whispered, "and you'll always be my favourite prince." Thomas smiled one last time, squeezed Diana's hand weakly, and closed his eyes. He passed away peacefully 7 minutes later, with Diana holding his hand and his parents holding him. By 3 a.m., news of Diana's unauthorised hospital visit had reached Buckingham Palace. Sir Robert Fellows, the Queen's private secretary, was woken by an urgent phone call from the palace security chief. "Sir, we have a significant protocol breach. Princess Diana visited Great Ormond Street Hospital tonight without authorisation, without security, without any official clearance whatsoever." Robert sat up, instantly awake. "When?" "She arrived at approximately 11:45 p.m. and remained there for over 2 hours. She just left. This is a serious violation, sir. The most serious I've seen in my entire career." Robert immediately called an emergency meeting for 7 a.m. By the time the palace staff assembled, the story was already leaking to early morning news broadcasts. "Princess Diana's Midnight Hospital Dash" was the headline forming on newspaper front pages. At 8 a.m., Robert called Diana. His voice was cold, formal, and angry. "Your Royal Highness, I need you to come to Buckingham Palace immediately. The Queen wishes to speak with you." "I understand," Diana said quietly. She had been expecting this. At 10 a.m, Diana was escorted into a private sitting room at Buckingham Palace. She expected a formal conference room filled with disapproving officials. Instead, it was just the Queen, waiting alone. Elizabeth II stood by the window, her back to Diana, her posture rigid. The silence stretched for a long moment. "Your Majesty," Diana began, "I know I broke protocol. I know what I did was—" "You violated one of our most fundamental rules," the Queen interrupted, still not turning around. "You went to a public institution in the middle of the night without security, without clearance, without authorization. You put yourself at risk. You undermined every protocol we have established to protect this family." Diana felt tears threatening. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty. I know I should have asked permission, but there wasn't time. Thomas was dying, and I had promised him—" "You promised a dying child you would be there," the Queen finished, finally turning to face Diana. Her expression wasn't angry. It was something else, something Diana couldn't quite read. "Yes, ma'am, I promised him, and I couldn't break that promise, even if it meant breaking your rules." The Queen was silent for a long moment, studying Diana's face. Then, unexpectedly, she walked to the sofa and sat down. "Sit with me, Diana." Diana sat, confused and wary. The Queen looked at her hands, then spoke quietly. "In 1982, when William was born, I wanted to cancel a state visit to Belgium to stay with you and the baby. But protocol demanded I go. Royal duty required it. So I left my grandson when he was just 4 days old, because that was what the rules required." She looked up at Diana. "I have spent my entire life following the rules, Diana. Every single rule, no matter how difficult, no matter what it cost me personally. I have sacrificed personal happiness for duty more times than I can count." The Queen's voice softened. "Last night, you did something I have never been able to do. You put a human being's need above royal protocol. You chose compassion over rules. You were there for a dying child when he needed you, regardless of the consequences." Diana was stunned. "Your Majesty, "You did what I never could," Elizabeth continued. "You showed that woman that in her darkest hour, someone cared enough to break every rule to be there. You gave that child comfort in his final moments, and you did it knowing you would face consequences. That wasn't rebellion, Diana. That was courage." The Queen stood up and walked to Diana. "I forgive you completely for breaking the protocol. In fact, I wish I had your courage to break it myself when it mattered." Diana felt tears streaming down her face. "I thought you would be furious." "I was furious," the Queen admitted, "for about 10 minutes. And then Robert told me why you had gone, told me about the child, about your promise, and I realized something. Rules exist to protect us, to maintain order and dignity. But sometimes, Diana, sometimes the most dignified thing we can do is break them." The story of Diana's midnight hospital visit became public within days. But instead of scandal, it became one of the most beloved stories of Diana's legacy. The Bradley family gave an interview describing how Diana had held their son's hand as he died, how she had given them comfort in their darkest moment. The public saw it not as a protocol violation, but as an act of extraordinary compassion. And remarkably, Buckingham Palace issued a statement that stunned royal observers. The Queen commends the Princess of Wales for her humanitarian visit to Great Ormond Street Hospital and her continued dedication to comforting those in need. It was unprecedented. The palace was publicly supporting a clear protocol violation. Behind the scenes, the Queen had made it clear to her staff. Diana's midnight visit was to be treated not as a breach, but as an example of royal service at its finest. The relationship between Diana and the Queen shifted after that night. They would never be close. Their personalities and approaches to royal life were too different. But there was a new understanding between them. Elizabeth had spent her life being the Queen. Diana had spent hers being human. And for one night, the Queen had seen the value in choosing humanity over protocol. Diana broke one of the most sacred royal rules on December 18th, 1995. She visited a public hospital in the middle of the night, without authorization, without security, without permission. She violated centuries of protocol to keep a promise to a dying 7-year-old boy. The palace was horrified, officials were outraged, and the Queen was furious. Until she understood why. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is break the rules that everyone else is too afraid to challenge. Diana understood that. She knew there would be consequences, knew she would face anger and disapproval, but she also knew that being there for Thomas Bradley mattered more than following protocol. The Queen, who had spent 70 years following every rule without exception, saw something in Diana's act that she had never seen before. She saw someone willing to sacrifice their standing, their reputation, and their relationship with the crown to show compassion to a dying child. And in that moment, Elizabeth II did something nobody expected. She forgave Diana completely. Not because the rule didn't matter, but because she finally understood that sometimes people matter more than rules. That's the story of the royal rule Diana broke that made the Queen forgive her. It wasn't about rebellion or defiance. It was about a promise kept, a child comforted, and a moment of humanity that transcended centuries of protocol. And it proved that even in the most traditional, rule-bound institution in the world, compassion can still win.